Hello, explorers! Thank you for joining us during our Summer Kids Club. I hope this is going to be another exciting episode of our Curious Crabs. Let's see. Are there any curious crabs out there that might be interested in exploring this? What is this? We'll get to that. If you have any comments, observations, things that you're wondering about, go ahead and while we are live, this is August 3rd at 11 o'clock. This is a 30-minute program. If you have any questions, comments, answers, observations, go ahead and text us. That number is 562-286-1838. Now, if you are watching the recording of this episode at a later time, go ahead. We still want to hear from you. Go ahead and email us at live@lbaop.org, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Okay, Curious Crabs, today's episode is all about the kelp forest. Now, what is this stuff? Have you ever seen this before? Okay. Show of hands. How many of us have been to the beach before? Ooh, wow. So many of you have been to the beach before. Very cool. Now, did you happen to see any seaweed on the beach? Maybe it looks something like this. Oh, but it was on the ground. Maybe some flies were flying around it, and it was like, smelly seaweed. Well, seaweed, when it's in a forest like this, a giant kelp forest, is really important. Not just because it's a pretty cool habitat or place for animals to live, but it's also important for you and me. Okay. I'm not a scuba diver. Are you? How is this important to us if we never go visit it in the water? Okay. Let's go ahead and take in a deep breath. And let it out. One more. Guess what? I know a lot of the time we thank trees on Earth Day or Arbor Day. Thank you so much for giving us all of the oxygen that we breathe. Trees are so important. Now, trees are important, but guess what? We can thank at least one of those breaths to algae. Yeah, seaweed, the kelp forest, is a type of algae. And more than half of our oxygen is actually coming from the ocean. So thank you, algae. So that's one way that this kelp forest is very important to you and me. Do you like breathing? Yeah, we need to be able to breathe oxygen in order to live in this amazing world. So we can definitely thank this algae. So right off the bat, this is a pretty cool habitat, and we haven't even seen any animals yet. Okay, let's go ahead and check out a kelp forest that has some animals in it. Now we do have, yes, so this is actually one of our exhibits here at the Aquarium of the Pacific. And as you can see, yeah, it's a kelp forest. Now we don't see it moving around like we did before. And that's because this is at the aquarium and we actually don't have any wave machines in this particular exhibit. But naturally, you would see a little motion of the ocean with these kelp. But now we get to see some animals here in the kelp forest. So I said that the kelp forest is a habitat, and a pretty important habitat, not only to you and me so that we can breathe, but then also to all these animals that call it home. Let's take a couple of moments to see what kind of animals call this habitat home. Now, this is just an exhibit here at the aquarium. So we don't have every single animal that calls the kelp forest home, but this is a pretty good model of some animals that might call the kelp forest home here in Southern California. Because did you know we have these giant kelp forests right off of our coast here in Southern California? If you were to go, see, I'm in Long Beach right now. If I were to go, run, dive into the water, I might see something that looks similar to this. So these are all local species that I could find here in Southern California. But Southern California isn't the only place where we can find giant kelp forests. There are actually 5 different places on Earth where we can find them. But back to our observations, meaning back to using our eyes. What do you notice in this habitat? And feel free to text in live right here, use our text number, to text in any animals that you see calling this habitat home. Now, something that you may notice that we actually didn't see before in the other kelp forest are these big old boulders. Look at those big old boulders. Do you think those are an important part of the habitat, or do you think, everything would still be the same even if the boulders weren't there? What do you think? We didn't see them before, but maybe we just weren't looking at the ground, right? The rocks actually are pretty important. The kelp itself, it's kind of like a plant, but not entirely like a plant. It doesn't have roots like a plant. So plants have roots, they put those roots into the ground, right? And then they can use those roots to bring out nutrients from the ground and water from the ground. Now, our kelp doesn't need roots to get nutrients, but it still has something that looks like a root. It is called a holdfast. So I have a real holdfast over here. This looks like a block of roots. This is the holdfast. And what the kelp does is it has this holdfast kind of just holding on to these rocks. So this type of algae, this seaweed, it doesn't need to have soil rich with nutrients. Rather, it just has this holdfast to literally hold on to the rock so that when the waves come, it doesn't fly off and end up on our beach, smelly with flies all over it, right? So this holdfast, similar to roots, but doesn't work the same way. But that's why these boulders are so important in this habitat. The kelp needs to hold on to the boulders. If it was just holding on to the sand, that's pretty easy to just fall out of. Okay, back to the animals. What animals do we see? I think it's pretty hard not to notice the handful, we have 3 giant sea bass. Now, this is a camera, right, that we have in this exhibit, and the giant sea bass can see their reflection on the camera, kind of like a mirror almost. And they love to look at themselves. They love to look at their little reflection. So that's why this giant sea bass really wants to be a part of this program. Now, the giant sea bass is also a really important part of this habitat, of this whole ecosystem. Now, take a look around at the other fish. It's kind of hard with this giant sea bass in your face, but you can even see some other fish kind of in the background here. Are any of the fish as big as the giant sea bass in this habitat? Look around. Do you see any other fish that are as big as them? Oh, we just saw a shark go by. But no, right? The giant sea bass are the largest fish in this exhibit. Largest fish in the exhibit. They're also towards the top of the food chain for this habitat, meaning they don't really have any sort of predators that are looking to eat the giant sea bass. So they're pretty important, being the apex predator, the top predator in this ecosystem. if something bad were to happen to their population numbers go down, oh, what happens to a food chain when we lose the apex predator? Some bad things can happen. So this giant sea bass is very important, not only in his own mind, trying to steal the show earlier, but very important to this habitat and this food web. But what do you think? Have you ever heard of a giant sea bass? How do you think their population numbers are in the wild? Do you think they're doing really good? Almost maybe too many giant sea bass in the ocean? Do you think they're doing okay, medium, they're doing fine? We have just enough, not too many, you know? Or do you think, ooh, are they endangered? What do you guys think? Have you ever heard of a giant sea bass? Well, I told you before, yeah, look at this giant sea bass. I've told you before that they're at the top, right? They didn't have any predators. So because of that, they aren't super scared of anything, really. The reason that they kind of blend in with the rocks and camouflage isn't so that they can hide from potential predators, but it's actually so that they can hide from their prey. These giant sea bass, I mean, you saw them swimming around, right? Do they look like they're some fast swimmers? They can chase down their prey really fast? No, definitely not. They are what we call an ambush predator, meaning they patiently wait for their food to swim by before they pounce and get a fish, get their prey really, really, really fast. So they look like a rock. Oop, pretending to be a rock. Pretending to be a rock. So that when a little fish swims by, they can quickly slurp up their meal. But they aren't really scared of anything. So then when people started coming around with their fishing spears, the sea bass weren't scared. And actually they were hunted to a point that their numbers weren't doing so well. Ugh, endangered. But we now have these animals protected in addition to their whole habitat protected. We have what's called marine protected areas, kind of like, have you ever been to a state park or maybe a national park? Yeah, those are protected areas that we're like, hey, this area is so cool. We want to preserve this area so that people can come to visit for years and years and years to come. Well, we have those types of parks in the water too. So we have some local kelp forests here in Southern California that have been protected. So even if other animals live in the kelp forest that aren't endangered, guess what? Just by living in that kelp forest, they are protected within that marine park, so to speak. So now our giant sea bass numbers are getting a little bit better, right? But it kind of takes a long, long time. To become a big, big fish takes a long, long time. So the aquarium has a little project where we have helped out by raising and breeding our own giant sea bass. Now, it's hard to tell in this picture, but this is an itty bitty little baby sea bass. And then we are able to raise them up to a certain size and then release them back into the ocean, into that protected area, so that they can hopefully grow up and restock the natural population. But look at how different the baby looks than that adult we saw. What colors were that adult? We saw gray, dark gray, right? They have spots, kind of the same, but they were a very different color. And I told you that giant sea bass was kind of just pretending to be a rock, right? So that it could ambush and eat its prey. Now, this itty bitty baby, when the giant sea bass, even though when it's adult, it doesn't have any predators, when it's an itty bitty baby, do you think it has predators? Yes, it does when it's a small little fish. So this little fish, this color, kind of helps it to blend in with the kelp. It can kind of hang out in this swaying motion of the kelp and blend in with the kelp. So if an animal is swimming by, but it's meat, not kelp, it's not even bothering to look at the kelp, right? So hopefully this little baby can grow up to be bigger, 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 until it starts turning that gray color once it's pretty big, and it can start pretending to be a rock again. Very cool animal that lives in our kelp forest. Okay, oh yes, this beautiful, beautiful kelp forest. Let's go back and see some other animals that live in our blue cavern exhibit. So we saw it. This little guy right here, a very important member of the kelp forest. So I'm going to have kelp forest. No, we do have sea otters. And what we used to have, and that is an important part of the sea otters' story and their conservation. They are currently an endangered species. And that is because people hunted them for their fur. The point that they almost, well, people thought that we had white sea otters off the face of the planet. We thought that they were extinct. But there was a few lone survivors. And from those survivors are all of the sea otters that we have today. So instead of having a population in the 50s or in the hundreds, we are now in the thousands of sea otters, which is good, but not quite to the numbers that we used to have, as you can see, because We don't have any sea otters here in Southern California. They're more in our central and northern coast of California. So, hopefully, their populations eventually make it to a size where we can start to see their population moving down south. I would be really, really excited for that day to come. But why are sea otters so important to their habitat? What is this guy doing right now? Eating. We all eat, right? But sea otters eat a lot of food, okay? They actually eat 25% of their total body weight every single day just to keep warm. Okay, 25% of your body weight. What does that even mean, right? Think about this. However much you weigh, imagine eating that many quarter-pound cheeseburgers every single day. So if you were to weigh 100 pounds, that's eating 100 quarter-pound cheeseburgers per day just to keep warm, just to keep up your metabolism. Isn't that wild? So these little sea otters eat a lot of food. Now, what food is it that they're eating? So they can eat crabs, they can eat clams. For the most part, they aren't very fast swimmers, so they aren't going to try and chase after a fast fish, but they're going to go down and they're going to find things that move slow. Sea stars, for example. And for some sea otters, their favorite snack is an urchin. Have you seen these before? This looks like a ball of purple toothpicks, right? But guess what? That is an animal. And not many animals. Do you want to eat something that's pokey, like a cactus with all its spines on it? Oh no, you would get hurt, right? But, so many animals can't eat these urchins, but sea otters are an animal that can. They are able to crack open this hard, rough exterior with a rock. They can use a tool, because they have little hands, and they can get to the meat inside. Okay, poor urchin, what is that all about? Why do we care? Well, urchins love to eat seaweed. Guess what? In areas where urchins are allowed to just run wild with no predators, we lose the kelp forest. Those areas are called urchin barrens. So where there once was a really cool kelp forest, just like the ones that we saw before, the urchins could potentially eat the whole forest if they are left unchecked with no predators. Think about all the animals that we've seen today that call the kelp forest home. Think about the benefit of the kelp forest, even for you and me, making oxygen, which is so awesome that they are able to do that for us. No more kelp forest? That's why sea otters and other animals that are able to eat urchins are so important to the ecosystem and to their food webs. Yeah, look at this little guy. So cute. In addition to the fact that they are just so cute, and don't you want to look at them and cuddle them? Please don't cuddle them. But viewing them from a kayak or whatnot on vacation is a very cool experience. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about sea otters. So we said that their metabolism, eating so much, is something that helps to keep them warm. What else, looking at the sea otter, do you think helps to keep them warm? Their fur! Yeah! So, eating a whole lot makes them feel warm, but then also their fur. Now, their fur, if you remember, is what got them into trouble. Their fur is what people started to hunt them for because it is actually the thickest, densest fur on the whole planet. Okay, think about this. I have a part down the middle of my hair, and you can see my skin in between my hair, right? Take a look at yourself in the mirror. Same story, right? If you have a cat or a dog or maybe a guinea pig at home, try to part their hair. Guess what? You see their skin underneath their hair. But when it comes to a sea otter, and you try to part their fur, you just find more fur. Their fur is so, so thick. Okay, hold up a circle like this for me. Not a terribly big circle, right? Now, what if we put that circle on the sea otter, and then, for whatever reason, we had a lot of time on our hands maybe, we decided to count every single hair just in that little circle that we placed in the otter. How many hairs do you think we would count? 100? Do you think we'd find 1,000? 2,000? 100,000? Guess what? In that little circle, we're going to be here for quite some time because we could count up to 1,000,000 hairs on that sea otter. Okay, that's a really big number and hard for me to understand. Think about this. Count out 10 people and all of the hairs of their head of those 10 people would be up to 1,000,000 hairs. That's a lot of hairs in just this tiny little circle. Now, we just got a text question in. How long do sea otters live? That's a great question. We want them to live a super long time, right? Look at that happy little guy. So, sea otters out in the ocean, their natural habitat, they're probably going to live 10, maybe 12 years, maybe a little bit less than that. At a place here, like the Aquarium of the Pacific, where they're getting fed great quality seafood, where they are predator free, right? Nobody's trying to chase them down, where they are getting excellent health care. And guess what? Even going to the dentist for those pearly whites at a facility like the aquarium, our sea otters can live into their 20s. Isn't that crazy? Into their 20s, almost doubling their life expectancy. Pretty crazy. Pretty cool. Talking about what they eat, I said that our animals here are getting some high quality seafood, right? So we feed our otters clams, shrimp. They really love shrimp. Sometimes some squid. Depending on the otter, not all of them are fans of the squid, but some are. Okay? And all of that seafood that we are feeding our animals is all restaurant quality.
I'm one of the mammalogists that gets to work with our sea otters, as well as our...
Here's a video.
My name is Sam.
Yep,
I'm one of the mammalogists that gets to work with our sea otters, as well as our seals and sea lions. I'm going to be feeding Betty today in front of you guys and talking to you guys about sea otters as well as Betty. And I'm going to feed her this whole bucket. So if you take a zoom in here, she's going to eat all of this in one sitting, and she gets about 4 to 5 sessions of this every single day. So she gets this yummy squid right here, some clam pieces, and then some shrimp with the shell and everything. No heads, but with the shell. So come on in. I'm going to go and start the session and bring Betty closer to you guys. All right. So this is Betty. She's our 9-year-old California sea otter. Here at the aquarium, we have 5 southern sea otters that call the aquarium home. And all...
Okay, very, very cool to be able to watch that kind of behind the scenes clip of what it's like to be a trainer and take care of these animals. We saw actually some of the food that I was talking about. And like I was saying, it's all restaurant quality, sustainable seafood, meaning that's the same seafood that if you like to eat seafood and you go to a restaurant, that could be the same seafood that ends up on your plate. It's high quality stuff and it's sustainable, meaning when the fishermen caught that food, they didn't catch too many, that the population would be hurt, right, and not have enough back in the ocean. And also, it means that we caught it in a way that we didn't harm other species that we didn't intend to catch. So sustainable seafood should be a goal not only for this furry little pal, but it should be a goal for you and me as well when we are going to restaurants or grocery shopping. Okay, friends, we are just about out of time. Don't forget that this is Summer Kids Club. It is happening all week long, where we are learning and being explorers together, learning different topics. There are 3 episodes every single day. Okay, we have Jamming Jellies at 9 a.m. in the morning. That is our pre-K through K class. We have our Penguin Party. That is at 10, and that is for K through 2nd grade. And then we have our Curious Crabs, which you are watching right now, and that is for 3rd through 5th grade. But the adventure doesn't have to stop now that the program is ending. Let me go over to my Explorer camera, and we have activities for you to do at home. So this is the activity that partners with today's Curious Crabs episode, and it's exploring a food web. So we talked a little bit about food webs during today's episode, talking about how sea otters are an important part of the food web because of the things that they eat. So you can ask parent or guardian to check this out on our website, and there's activities for you to do at home, either before each day's episode or sometime after. Just keep learning and stay curious. All right, Curious Crabs, until next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day.